Hi, my name is Albert, one of the co-founders of VectorShift. Today we're going to talk about an advanced use case that we just did a deployment for an enterprise, which is matching POs to invoices. All right, let's walk through a process of how this is done manually in a company and how that's translated to getting automated through VectorShift. For the specific company that we worked for a manufacturing company that receives invoices for raw materials that they purchase. And, you know, the process goes when, say the manufacturing firm wants to purchase a certain type of material, they create first a purchase order. They will send this purchase order to the raw material supplier, and then the raw material supplier will deliver the goods. And once everything is delivered, the raw material supplier will send the invoice to the manufacturing company. And once this is received, the invoice will be matched to the purchase order to make sure that all the numbers matched before the raw material supplier is paid for. Let's go through an example. So this is an example of a purchase order, and it only has one item, and this is the example that we're going to use in the build today. But it has purchased this product name, one quantity of this product. The unit price is $715 per order. It's received a 30% discount, $85 of shipping, coming out to $585.50. The purchase order is this number right here. And once this is created by the manufacturing firm, right, it's going to contact the raw material supplier, right, and the raw material supplier will deliver the goods, and then the raw material supplier will create this invoice over here, right, that is supposed to match exactly the purchase order, right, the unit price, the discount, the shipping handling, and finally the total. So what this person does, at the manufacturing company, once they receive this invoice, is that first they search up the purchase order. In this case, it's 202-31218, right? And then they will find the purchase order based on this number. Then they'll go in and line by line match all these numbers against the invoice to make sure that they're getting the right discount, the shipping is charged at the right number, and every line item matches. And you can imagine for a company like this, it's going to take a lot of work to make sure that everything is matched and they're receiving multiple invoices and purchase orders every single day. And it's multiple people's full-time job to make sure that the right amount of payments are all transferred and all the numbers are matching and that they're not overpaying or underpaying for anything. Let's go ahead into VectorShift and show you how to automate this process. So now we have the process defined. As long as you can discuss exactly how any process is done manually step by step, you can automate it in VectorShift. Let's translate this into nodes in the VectorShift platform. So how this company automated this is first they're going to take an invoice in that they just received and find the purchase order in the knowledge base, or in this case, they've connected to NetSuite, but you could connect to other providers like QuickBooks or whatever other software that you use to actually find the right purchase order and then do the matching of the invoice and then come out with a response, which is do everything match, and if not, what exactly in the process is not matching. So let's go ahead and build this automation. So the first thing is we have to make sure that this pipeline is able to accept in the new invoice that is received. So in this case, an invoice is a file. So we have to use the file type. So this allows a file to be inputted into the pipeline. The next thing that we have to do is we have to extract the relevant data from the invoice, right? And make sure that each item is matched. So in this case, let's go ahead and use a data extraction node. So we have an extract data node, and there's a couple items that we want to extract, right? So the first thing is the PO number, right? So this is going to be used to find within the knowledge base what PO is in there, right? So that we could do the matching against the invoice. So the PO number is of type text, and then I'm going to give it a quick description to help the AI understand, what is the PO number. So then the other thing we're going to extract is the vendor name. And I'm also going to extract the total amount from the invoice. And most importantly, I'm going to extract a list of all the items purchased. Now, why is this important? We have to find out all the different items that are billed in the invoice, and then we have to go line by line to check each of these items, just like how a human would, right? So a list of items, let's just say it's listed, there's item A, item B, item C. We have to figure out what these items are in the invoice, and then we have to go into each item and understand the quantity, the unit price, etc., to figure out whether each of these items match the PO. So this is going to be a list of text, right? It's a list of items, not just a single item, because the invoice could have multiple items in the invoice. All right, so we've extracted 4 different types of things, right? Let's go ahead and connect the input node to the extract data node, and we're going to extract from the process text from the file. All right, so the other thing we need to extract is we need to extract the quantity of items for each of the items received, right? So the reason why we can't do this from the extract data node is that we have to make sure that the lists align. We have to make sure that we're extracting the data for the list of for the quantities in the same order as the list of items purchased, so that we could do one-to-one matching. So the best way to do this is to actually create another pipeline and go item by item based on the list that's extracted here to figure out from the invoice how many of each item is billed for. Let's go ahead and, in this case, build another pipeline that's able to take in the invoice and a specific item and then figure out how many was billed in that invoice. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to pipelines. I'm going to create a new pipeline. And in this case, this pipeline, I'm going to call it item count extractor from invoice VF. So this pipeline is going to take in an invoice, and then it's going to also take in the specific item. So in this specific case, I want to pass in this entire invoice. And in this case, there's only one pipeline, but then I'm going to pass in this item, and then I'm going to see how many of the quantity was built for. In this case, it's just one, right? But you can imagine that there's 3 items, right? Maybe it's item 1, item 2, item 3, and maybe there's quantity 1, 3, and 2. We're going to pass in each item one at a time and then figure out how many was built for that item. So we're going to pass in the item, and then I'm going to have 2 LLMs extract the how many of each, and then the unit price. I have some prompts that I've pre-written to help this video go a little bit more smoother. So I've written that your job is to extract the quantity invoice for the item in the invoice. And then your job is to extract the quantity unit price for the item in the invoice. And then I'm going to pass it the invoice and then the specific item we're looking for at this given time. Let's go ahead and connect both the invoice and item to each of these LLM nodes. And let's do the same for this LLM. There we go. So what this pipeline can do, right? And I'm just going to attach 2 output nodes really quickly here so that we can return the invoiced quantity. And in this case, the invoiced unit price. So just to review what this pipeline is doing, right? We are passing in the invoice and the specific item we're going to do the extraction for. We're going to find the invoiced quantity and then the invoiced unit price using 2 LLMs. And then we're going to pass that out through 2 variables called invoice quantity and invoice unit price. Let's go ahead and deploy this pipeline. Now, we could utilize this pipeline in the first pipeline now by going back to the pipeline that we were creating. Let's give this pipeline name. And now we're going to take in the list of items that was received, and then we're going to go through each item in the list to figure out the unit price and then the invoice quantity. We could use the pipeline node to call the pipeline that we just built. And we need to do this in list mode, which means to go through each item in the list and do this process for that list of items. So turn on list mode, you just click this button called list mode. And then we're going to go process each item from the list of items variable from the extract data node. So I've connected this, and now I have to just pass this invoice as into this pipeline node as well. One thing you're going to notice, the invoice type is of type text when this type is list of text, right? To be able to do the matching, right, we have to duplicate this n times, where n is the number of list of items purchased. So let's go ahead and duplicate this invoice using the duplicate item node. And then I'm going to duplicate it however many times, how many items are in the invoice. So just to clarify why we need to do this, right? So what this pipeline is doing now is that we are taking the invoice, we're extracting a list of the items in the invoice, right? So there could be item A, item B, item C, right? That's going to be in the list now. Now we're going to be applying this pipeline to each item in that list, right? So we're going to be saying for item A, what's the unit price and what is the quantity? Item B, what is unit price and what is the quantity? However, we need to pass in the invoice each time that this is called, right? In this case, we need to duplicate the process text however many times that there is in the invoice. In this case, there's three items in the invoice, and then pass it into this pipeline as well. All right. So once this is done, we have all the data we need to do the matching from the invoice, right? We have a list of all the items and a parallel list of all the quantities for each of the items, and then a third parallel list of the unit price for each of the items. We also have the PO number and then the total amount. So we have all the items from the invoice extracted in a data format that we can now match consistently against the POs. Let's go ahead and do that piece of work now. So as I mentioned, we need to now match all these quantities in a successive manner. And we're going to first build a pipeline that matches at the item level, right? We have to make sure that each item has the same unit price, the same quantity, the same name, and that all of that matches. And then once we have that done, we're going to match the total amount to make sure that's summed correctly before we could detect that the entire invoice matches the PO. So whenever we have a subprocess like this, we're going to create another pipeline just like what we did here, and then call that in the main pipeline. Let's go ahead and go create a new pipeline. And let's create this pipeline. So this pipeline is going to take in an item name. We're going to take in the invoiced quantity, right? We're going to take in the invoiced unit price. And then we're going to take in the PO number. So what we're going to do is we're going to now find the most related PO from a knowledge base, right? And in the case of the deployment that we did, we'll be connecting to NetSuite or QuickBooks to do the matching. But just to keep that confidential, I've stored POs in a knowledge base, right? You can just upload them here or connect them to Google Drive. And we're going to find based on the PO number. And we're going to find the POs from this knowledge base. And then we're going to do the matching of all these items, right? The item name versus item quantity, item unit price against the PO that is in the knowledge base. How do we do that? So we take an LLM node, and then we have a prompt that I've pre-written to do this validation. So I've written that you received invoice quantity and invoice unit price for an item. Your job is to match the quantity and unit price for the item, matches the PO using the data in the PO data. Only use the PO data that matches the PO number. If both quantity and unit price matches, return the word yes. If they do not match, return the word no. Let's go ahead and connect all of this information to this OpenAI node. I've gone ahead and created this prompt as well, but we're passing in, the item, the invoice quantity, the invoice unit price from the inputs, and then the PO data from the knowledge base. Let's go ahead and pass out the output. And then this, I'm going to give it a name called if it's match, and the output here will be yes versus no. Let's call this match each item VF. Let's go ahead and deploy this pipeline. So let's review what this pipeline does. This pipeline is meant to match items at the unit level at the invoice against the PO. It takes in the item name, the invoice quantity, the invoice unit price, and the PO number, right, that we've extracted from either the sub pipeline that we just made previously or the previous pipeline. Then we're going to query the knowledge base with the PO number to find from the existing POs what is, what POs match this number. And then we're going to take that data and we're going to match it against the invoice quantity and the invoice unit price and the items to make sure that everything matches. And then we're going to send out an output of yes versus no, whether everything matches. Let's go ahead back into the master pipeline. All right. So let's go ahead and call this pipeline that we just made in this master pipeline. Let's drag out another pipeline node. Let's call match each item. Let's turn on list mode again. And let's go ahead and connect each of these fields up. So the invoice quantity is coming from the first pipeline node. Let's go ahead and collect invoice quantity. The unit price is coming from the first pipeline node as well. The item is coming from the extract data node, and then the PO number is coming from the item is coming from the extract data node, and the PO number is coming from the extract data node as well. Just like the same situation that we have here, right? The PO number is a text, but we need list of text here, right? So let's do the duplication again. So extract data, PO number, and we're going to match the list of items. And then we're going to go ahead and connect this to the second pipeline. And there we go. Let's review what we have done here. What we've done is we've taken an invoice, right? We have extracted the PO number, the vendor name, the total amount billed, and a list of items that is in this invoice, right? Then according to the list of items, we're going to each item and we're figuring out what's the quantity and what's the unit price. So each of these lists are in the same order, right? Item A has 3 items, $25 a piece. Item B, quantity of 5, $75 a piece, right? So we have 3 lists concurrently that are in the same order. And then we're going to go into each item and we're going to match against the PO to figure out whether the quantity matches the PO, the unit price matches the PO, the item name matches the PO, and then the PO, we're searching from the PO number. And this is going to output yes versus no, whether each of these items matches. So let's go ahead and handle the case when things do not match. So I have a prompt that's created here that says, your job is to assess if the list of strings is all yes, or if there's at least one no, right? So this is going to output a list of the same size of the list of items that says, does that item A matches, item B matches, or item C matches, right? So if it's all yes, that means every single item matches the PO. If there's one no, it means that item, right, does not match the PO. So I've written the prompt that says, your job is to assess if all the items on the list are yes, right, meaning everything matches. If there's at least one no, output the word no. So I'm going to connect pipeline 1 to this LLM. And now we have to use a condition node that handles the case for no, because we don't want to even continue the pipeline if there's anything that is not matched. So let's go ahead and click OpenAI 0 and response. And let's just say if it equals yes, we're going to take this path. If it doesn't, if there's a no, we want to take path 1, right? And if it's no, right, it means that something has not matched, and then we want to output a message that says, for example, item quantity and or item unit price does not match. All right, so we'll handle this case later on in the video, but let's go ahead and say the case that it does match, right? There's only one final thing that we have to make sure is correct, in the invoice, right? We want to match that, maybe there was an error in the summation or, the shipping price or, the final total amount against the PO. So let's go ahead and, let's do the matching here. So in the knowledge base, we want to call the PO number, the PO again, and we want to match if the total amount in the PO and the invoice matches. So I have a prompt that says, your job is to match the total amount in the invoice matches the PO. You receive the invoice and the PO. If it matches, output yes. If it doesn't match, output no. Do not output anything else. So let's go ahead and connect this up. So we have to pass in the invoice data from the input node, and then the knowledge base from the knowledge base reader. And we only want to run this knowledge base at all, if everything at the unit level matches. So let's go ahead and connect this. And then the search query is the same. We have to search based on the PO, which is from the extract data node. Okay, let's review what we have here now. So at this step, we've basically determined if each item has matched against the PO, right? And we're saying that everything matches. Now, the only thing we have to do is match the total amount. So we did the same thing. We search based on the PO, the same knowledge base, to find the PO that matches the PO number. Then, we're sending the invoice again, right, from the input node, and we're going to match whether the invoice matches the PO. And I'm going to say output yes if it does, output no if it doesn't. So then we're going to create this conditional scheme again to make sure that, we can handle the case that everything matches or if the total amount doesn't match. So let's go ahead and drag on another condition node. Let's connect the OpenAI node. And we're going to say if it's yes, it's going to come out of path 0. If it doesn't, we're going to come out of path 1. There we go. So path 0 is everything is correct. So let's send a message that, total amount, item quantity, and unit prices all match. If things do not match, we're going to say total amount doesn't matches. All right. So now we have basically all the 3 cases taken care of. Everything matches, the total amount doesn't match, or the item quantity or the unit prices do not match. Now we need to merge these paths together so that the right case gets outputted from the pipeline. We do this case through a merge node, and we have to create 3 different paths. So we have the function pick first, meaning whatever one of these paths run, right? The invoice can only fall into one of these 3 categories. Whatever runs, we're just going to output that piece of text. And finally, we're going to output the final answer through an output down. All right, so let's review the pipeline, and then we'll run it as a test case. So first, the input node takes in an invoice, which is a file. We're going to process it into text. We're going to extract the PO number, the vendor name, the total amount, and the list of items purchased. Right? Let's just say there's 3 items in the list. Then we're going to extract for each item in the list the item quantity and the item unit price. Then we're going to pass that, and for each item in the list, for each quantity and each unit price, we're going to match it against the PO. The output is going to be yes versus no, whether each item matches at the unit level. If it's no, we're going to print out the text that item quantity and or unit price do not match. If it does match, we're going to match the total quantity, right? And we're going to say yes or no doesn't match at all. right? Does it match the PO? If it does match, we're going to print out yes. If it doesn't, we're going to print out no. If it's no, I'm going to print out the text total amount does not match. If it's yes, I'm going to print out total amount, item quality, and your prices does match. Then we're going to merge all these paths together and then print out the output. Let's go ahead and now deploy the pipeline, and I'll show you an example. So let's go ahead and use this invoice that we have here, right? And we're going to match it against this PO that I showed you earlier on in this video. I'm going to go ahead and upload the invoice. And let's go ahead and run the pipeline. So we're going to go ahead and show you what this pipeline is doing at each step. So right now we're processing, we're doing OCR on this text. And you could go ahead and click additional outputs. And it says, the PO number is 20231218. Just getting that number right here. It's getting the list of items purchased. There's only one list in this list, which is right here, this item. And the total amount is 585.5, and then the vendor name is here. Then we're going to run this list item extractor on this only one item in the list, right? So the output is this invoice quantity is 1, and the unit price is 715, right? Which we're getting 715 and 1 right here. Then we're going to match each item one at a time against the PO. So it's basically going into this, right? We're finding the PO based on the number, and the unit price is 715, and the quantity is 1. So the output should be yes. So then we're going down this path. This is printing out yes, because every item in this list, there's only one item, is printing out yes. The response is yes. Then we're going to take this path, right? Which is, if there's yes, we're going to take this path. We're going to find the relative PO, and we're going to match if the total amount matches. So we're saying if 585.5 matches 585.5 over here. And indeed, it matches, and the response is yes. Then we're going to pass this to this condition node. And if it's yes, I'm going to print out total amount, item quantities, and unit price all matches, which it does. And you can see that the merge node is printing out that exact thing over here. And from there, we can see that the output node is printing out total amount, item quantities, and unit price all match. This was more of an advanced demo. Hopefully this was helpful to show you how to replicate a more advanced process in VectorShift. Thank you very much for your time. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Thank you.